morning mga katribo. Welcome to another episode of Straight Talk, where we tackle current issues that matter to all Filipinos and to each of us. We are live on Daily Tribune's Facebook page and on YouTube. I'm Gigi Arcelia.
I'm Chito Lasada. And our guest today is none other than the Executive Secretary,
Executive Director
Director of
of
the
the
Presidential
Human
Human
Rights
Rights Committee.
Committee Secretariat.
But he has the rank of Undersecretary, right? Mr.
So good
Yeah.
morning,
Good
Yusek
morning,
Noy,
Yusek
Yusek
Katura.
Katura.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Chito. Good morning, Ma'am Gigi. No? And thank you for unwittingly promoting me to Executive Secretary.
Malay mo.
Hindi. So magandang umaga po sa lahat ng mga tagasunod ng inyong programa.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
Good morning to
it's
all.
an honor to have you this morning, Yusek Katura. So
Yusek Norio na lang.
Yusek Noy. Yeah, so we fire away, Chito. So,
Yeah,
tungkol dito
mag-start
sa
tayo doon sa
ano ang
PHRC.
Okay.
Kung ano ang nature nito.
Okay. So our office is the Presidential Human Rights Committee Secretariat. No? So we are secretariat to the committee itself. Normally, people would ask, ano ba ang difference nito? What's the difference between this committee and the Commission on Human Rights? No? Kadalasan yun ang compare nila. Well, to start with, we have the Commission on Human Rights, which is a body that has been created by no less than the Constitution, and it is deemed as the independent national human rights institution. No? So that's part of our adherence to being part of the UN, as well as in agreement that as a signatory to the many international human rights treaties, we allow ourselves to be monitored by an independent body. So if you take a look at it, the Commission on Human Rights may be funded by government, but it's actually independent. Now, going to our office is under the Office of the President. So our role is basically similar to that of the Commission on Human Rights, but we are just limited to the Executive Department. If the Commission on Human Rights monitors all the bureaucracy, all the agencies under the bureaucracy, so the Executive, Judicial, Legislature, ours is simply focused on the Executive Department. So we have the committee, which is chaired by no less than the Executive Secretary, and then the Vice Chair would be the Department of Justice and the Department of Foreign Affairs. So the day-to-day management of the committee is handled by my office, the Secretariat. So that's what we do. We coordinate the work of the different executive bodies and ensure that they are aligned with our human rights obligations. Ayan. So yun ang difference niya.
I see. And government representation, I believe that the PHRC represents the country during reviews and other
Well, we
functions.
do that. That's really part of our mandate. But really, the overall mandate of the Secretariat is to constitute the Philippine delegations. No, okay. Before we proceed to that, as a signatory, as a member of the UN, and especially in line with our obligations, human rights obligations, we respect what we consider as the core human rights mechanisms. No? So of course we have the UN Human Rights Council, which is composed of 47 member states. By the way, the Philippines has been a 5-term member of the UN Human Rights Council. Kaya nga, kung minsan magtataka ka, bakit daw there's a lot of criticisms against the Philippine government. Samantalang tayo, we've always been part of the UN. Talagang we were elected, no, to serve for 5 terms. No, 5 terms na yan. So we have UN Human Rights Council. We have the UN treaty bodies, meaning the different UN committees that monitor the Philippines in accordance with the different treaties that we have signed, international human rights treaties. So we have the civil and political rights, economic, social, and cultural rights, and then women, children, indigenous peoples, migrant workers. So these are the sector rights. No? So we report to that, to those bodies on a regular basis. So the other one is the the UN Special Rapporteur System. Officially, it's called the UN Special Procedures Mandate Holders. And then finally, we have the Universal Periodic Review System, in which the UN Human Rights Council convenes itself as a technical working group. No? So why did I mention that? Because in all of those engagements with the state, that's where our office comes in. So every time that the Philippines engages with any of those four mechanisms, we are at the forefront. Meaning we organize the Philippine delegation, and then we coordinate with the UN on how the engagements will proceed, whether it be there in Geneva, where you were with us before, and then, or here in the Philippines if a UN Special Rapporteur comes visiting, and then so that's where we come in. No? Our office is really at the forefront, but it's really more of coordinating the work of all the agencies that are supposed to be part of that. No?
So, speaking of sectoral rights, yes,
Okay.
no,
Yeah.
and the Philippine engagement, recently kasi, I mean, a special UN Special Rapporteur was in the
Ah,
Philippines.
yes.
Yeah, it was a 10-day visit of Madam Fatima Singhateh.
Sing that.
Now, ano po yung relevance nung 10-day visit na yun? By the way, she is pala the UNSR for the sale and sexual exploitation of children. Ano po yung naging relevance nung 10-day visit?
One is, of course, ganito. So, UN Special Rapporteurs are independent experts. No? These are experts on human rights, focusing on various fields. No? So, as you mentioned, si Madam Singhate is focused on the sale and sexual exploitation of children. Okay. Now, the relevance of this is, one is, we do agree to have these country visits because we know that we can take advantage of their expertise. Ang sinasabi kasi natin palagi is that we know our human rights obligations. No? Alam natin kung anong pwedeng gawin. But there's always a room for improvement. And when it was brought up in our many conversations during at the side of the UN Human Rights Council, if we are willing to invite somebody who can come, we deemed it wise na tingnan alin ba talaga yung pinaka-relevant sa kanila na pwedeng pumunta. Kasi, Chito, there was a time that we really didn't want UNSRs coming in kasi highly politicized eh. Hindi pa man sila nakikipag-usap dito,
Dami namin.
they're already being taken advantage of by certain groups para i-advance yung kanilang agenda. So you can remember the likes of Philip Alston, Calamard, na? Si Calamard, hindi pa nga naimbitahan dito. Nagbisita na, pumunta na siya dito, nag-ikot-ikot na. So, for us, it was, parang, it was disrespectful of the process. So, however, in our engagements with the UN, we were always being told by some UN special rapporteurs na, sana naman you will not take Calamard as a representation of our integrity. So try to consider that. So because of the confidence and the honesty of these people that we've engaged with, even without a formal country visit, we had side events kasi, side engagements. So we agreed. Sabi namin, let's try to see to see if we can invite somebody who's very much willing. But our number one qualification is sana it should not be a highly politicized event. Kasi pag nahaluan na ng politics siya, nasisira na yung yung tenor, no, yung tone ng visit. Kasi ano ba talaga itong visit na to? These are not fact-finding missions actually. Kaya lang pinag-represent ng mga iba na these are here because there's a lot of problem in the Philippines. They are looking at cases of ganito. No, hindi eh. These are actually opportunities for sharing of best practices. Kasi meron tayong mga best practices na pwede rin nilang matutunan. At the same time, dapat may matutunan tayo sa kanila kasi independent experts sila eh. So doon tayo, yun ang kagandahan ng mga country visits na ito. Pero nasisira na nga dahil highly politicized. So itong kay Madam Singhateh, we were really very thankful na una, She was very fair in her assessment of the Philippines. No, she recognized that we had a lot of positive efforts na nagagawa na. But at the same time, she also recognized na meron pa mga ibang areas that need to be improved. And for us, that's very welcome kasi hindi naman tayo perfecto, di ba? So, and it also gives us a chance to convey before our people kung gaano kalawak pala ang human rights, no? And the area of respecting or protecting children is very much part of the human rights priority. Kasi kung mapapansin niyo ba, pag pinag-uusapan ng human rights sa atin, ano unang pumapasok? EJK,
EJK.
Anti-Illegal Drug Campaign. And it's used to define yung ating ano dito, ang human rights environment. Pero nakakalimutan na behind EJK, or no, hindi nga EJK behind deaths arising from the Anti-Illegal Drug Campaign, is the government's desire to fulfill, no, its obligation to protect our children. And that's a human right. Di ba? So, highly politicized kasi. So, in this aspect, we are telling our people, in our desire to protect our children, especially to protect them from being sold, from being sexually exploited, here is somebody from the UN who's helping us out. So, that's the beauty of this 10-day visit. And it's a good thing na even the CSOs that came into the picture were very supportive. In fact, hindi man lang sila, alam the usual na lumalabas sa media na, oh, ito, may mga kaso nakita dito, ito, they harp on the on the negative aspect rather than saying na, okay, there are a lot of things that we have na positive, Kasi the SR, the UN, the Special Rapporteur, really acknowledge, no? Like yung may law tayo on yung tinatawag na OSAEC, no? On sexual exploitation of children, di ba? Protection, di ba? And then yung mga natin, yung mga rehabilitation centers, no? And then how our DSWD, for instance, how our DOH, how our DLG come together to help children. So ito yung kagandahan na nakikita doon sa rather than focus on the negative aspect na ang daming kakulangan. And to think na, and then there's also a part of it na maganda. Itong sale of children, exploitation of children, may kasi ito this is something which is rather globalized na problema ito na hindi lang ng Pilipinas dahil ang problema ito dinadala din ng mga foreigners Sila yung behind, most of them are foreigners are behind this problem na online online. So we have had the opportunity to call on the special rapporteur na tulungan nyo kami. Help us out on this. We are trying our best to do something to protect our children. The UN has a responsibility to also help us champion the cause.
Besides championing the cause, what kind of other benefits will or help that the UN can offer through the SRs?
Well, yung SR kasi has the capacity or has the mandate to recommend something to the UN. No? For instance, if it deems that there's a good program to support, then they could recommend to the UN. No? Maganda nito, Chito, mabuti na mention mo kasi she also mentioned the need for yung transition centers. No? Kasi halimbawa, if you already have children, umabot na sila sa isang rehabilitation center, meron dapat point na nag-transition din siya bago mo siya ma-integrate into society. So, and then she also mentioned the need for special courts specific to children na sexually exploited. Hindi lamang yung mga family courts that we already have, which she acknowledged, no? And for us, that's a milestone. But sabi niya, we can still move forward. And these are the things that we really want to listen and want to hear from experts. Kasi hindi natin nakikita yun Oo.
We have read different figures on the recommendations of the Universal Periodic Review of the Philippines. So, ilan ba talaga, Yusek, yung recommendations ng UN?
Okay. The periodic review happens every 5 years. No? As I explained earlier, the UPR or the Universal Periodic Review is one of the UN human rights mechanisms. So under the under the UPR, as I said also, the UN Human Rights Council reconvenes itself as a technical working group na hindi na siya UN Human Rights Council pero UPR na siya na technical working group. So, ang ginagawa natin dyan, every 5 years, the state is being reviewed by our fellow members of the UN Human Rights Council. No? So, under this review, so we started in 2008, and then we had one in 2012, and then we had one in 2017. So now in 2022. So we have now covered the fourth cycle. Fourth cycle na siya. So what happens? We are given 3 hours of review, and then there will be states that will signify that they want to comment, they want to provide recommendations. So in this case, there were I think about 111 states, if I'm not mistaken, 108 to 111 states. No? Since nga, sila, 3 hours ang binigay sa kanila, so they had to speak for about 1 minute and I think 5 seconds.
Ganun kaigsi.
Ganun kaigsi. So wala na siyang mga niceties, no? Diretso na agad. But also remember that these are not just simply recommendations ang sinasabi nila, but also commendations, no? So nakakalimutan natin na baka sabihin, puro na lang recommend. They usually start with saying something very positive about the Philippines. And mind you, there were a lot of positive things that were said about the Philippines, starting from how we have progressed with our anti-illegal drug campaign, that we have a national human rights action plan, that we have areas on, advancing children's rights, women's rights, IP rights, trafficking. In fact, tier 1 tayo sa trafficking. Okay. So, after that, pupunta na sila sa recommendations. So, all in all the 110 plus states that were there recommended 289 recommendations. They forwarded 289 recommendations. No? So, for the first time, in fact, I think we have set a precedent on this. The Philippines, normally kasi after the UPR, the Philippines is given about 4 months to decide on, of these recommendations, how many will you accept? How many will you take note simply? Pag sinabi mong take note yan, hindi mo alam kung ano gagawin mo dyan. So it's either you reject it or just allow it to pass. Na parang ganun siya. For the first time, a state, the Philippines, outrightly accepted 200 recommendations. So nagulantang sila. Hi, are you sure Philippines? Yes, because
So, 200 out
of the 289 recommendations. No? Oh, so that's already more than 2/3 of the recommendation. No?
Is that unusual?
That's unusual. That's unusual kasi normally what we do is pagbalik mo na dito, pag-aaralan ng lahat. But it was a good thing because the Philippine delegation was headed by a Secretary of Justice, and many of the issues really concerned his department. So madali na lang. There was a quick decision making na amin to, pwede ko gawin yan, ganyan. Now, those recommendations that were not accepted outright need to be discussed here in the country because they also involved other agencies that were not part of the delegation. Specifically, Congress, for instance, there were recommendations telling us that we should legislate this law, we should have this, etc., etc. No, we have to consult as well. No? Ito, surprisingly, kung mapapansin din ninyo, yung mga critics of government were again focused that there were criticisms on the EJK, on anti-illegal drug campaign, etc. But kung titignan mo talaga yung recommendations, there were only about 4 of them that mentioned anti-illegal drug campaign problems. EJK, 3. Pero hindi siya lalampas ng 5. So you can just imagine, here are certain groups using 3 recommendations to define the entire UPR, which should not happen, no?
entire 289.
Entire 289, no? Parang in fact, ano nga diyan kung makikita mo, sabi nga namin maganda sana kung i-lump mo. Kasi ang recommendations, let's say, halimbawa, there will be some countries na meron parang recommendations yan. So, iisahin mo yan, isang recommendation lang talaga yan. But of course, we respected na these recommendations come from individual countries. Sabi ko, let's report it that way para naman respectful. Pero kung makikita mo ngayon, it's a good thing. I think our campaign to really campaign for truth on human rights has already been productive. The mere fact that we have been recognized for our efforts, that's already something that's positive, no? Na realize nila pala na ganito pala nangyayari sa Pilipinas, no? It's not actually that negative na sinasabi. No, it's really more on the positive things. And for us, when we shifted to our campaign na human rights is not all this eh. Human rights is has a larger picture. So let's move towards that. Kaya nga doon kami we even mentioned yung sona ni presidente when he started coming up with with a list of socio-economic projects. For us, that's a human rights agenda itself, no? So we're shifting, like alam mo yung kanyang priority, which is food security. That's a human right, the right to adequate food. So when we talk about food security, that's a right to adequate, and it's a basic human right which were very important, no? So
Mas yung engagement ngayon siguro under the present regime do sa human rights UN Human Rights Committee.
yeah, we were seeing that, no, coming in, and we have been naman kasi kahit ang panahon ni PRRD, Presidente Duterte, kahit na siya nakikriticize ang husto ng mga lalo ng mga ibang mga
That's
states,
correct, yes.
he still continued. Sabi niya, I will be saying this, but I will be doing this, no? So he remained respectful of the UN system. So patuloy pa rin siya nakikipag-engage kasi he did realize there's really value in continuing that engagement. Number one, we also need to tell as a UN member, it's also a responsibility to strengthen the mechanism. If we see it's being politicized, then let's do something about it. Let's correct the system. Kaya nga ang mahalaga dito is that how can you correct the system if you're not inside it, eh? Di ba? Hindi ka pwedeng nasa labas lang mag-criticize, hindi. So we are part of that. And that's the reason why itong continued engagement with the UN, or invitation for the UNSR to come in. Kasi a UNSR cannot visit without a proper invitation, eh.
So Madam Senator was invited.
Yes,
formally
yes, yes.
invited.
Kaya nga they can come, but not on a country visit. No, they can come perhaps on an invitation coming from an institution. Yeah, pero not on a country visit, not for a country visit. So for Madam Singhate, there was an official invitation for her to come.
So the invitation was already made during the UPR review. I mean, when
Much before. It was actually the first invitation that came from the Duterte administration. And the first and the first visit since 2015. 15.
I was supposed to ask you that
That's
mamaya.
correct.
Sabi
Oo.
ko na pang ilang visit na ba
Yeah.
ito ng
The first invitation from the Duterte administration and the first visit under the Marcos administration.
Alright.
So siya?
2015.
Oo.
So it really takes time to
It
I
does.
mean,
It's
after
not
an invitation has been
yan eh. For some people, baka sabihin nila, madali lang mag-imbita. No, it's not that easy. Kasi one
Yung
is
process.
you need to not only the administrative processes, no, you need to prepare technically. You need to prepare one, the terms of reference. What exactly does she want, or does the UN Special Rapporteur want? So he or she has to identify ano ba yung mga crucial issues para sa kanya. Kasi hindi naman pwede pagpunta mo dito, bigla kang out of the loop. Meron kayong pag-uusapan na iba, hindi eh. So there has to be a clearly defined checklist of issues that are of interest. Pagdating niyan, and before that, yung terms of reference, you also need to define sino yung mga agencies that she needs to engage with. And then for us to provide the proper information, we also need to convene. We had a lot of interagency meetings, eh. So the preparation for this November to December visit, it took us more than almost 4 to 5 months preparation. Kasi you also need to prepare the regional offices of the ILG. you need to prepare yung ano. And at the same time, even yung mga CSOs na i-engage na, they also need to prepare. And by the way, it's a 10-day visit, but only 5 days is for government, and then 5 days is also for civil society. Pero ngayon binago niya rin ang system. Sabi niya, well, we can do morning ang NGO, afternoon ang government, so gano'n. So, depende naman yan sa terms of reference. No? So, a lot of preparation needs to be done. You have to mobilize people. You need to have them present in engagements. You can just imagine heads of offices. At least the senior director should be there. So they have to give time, no, in that period. So hindi madali eh. Hindi madali siya. And you also need to have people on the ground to make sure that all is well. Na hindi ka naman pwede mag-intervene, of course. There are areas na engagement with civil society, government doesn't need to be there. So you also need, but at the same time, you also need to consider that she is a guest of the Philippines, so she also needs to be protected. No? Parang bisita yan, naalagaan mo siya, di ba?
So, since ang haba ng preparation, I'm sure, the outcome has been very productive.
Magiging outcome.
So-
Will Sing Hate make a report to the UN?
Yes. She will. I believe that would be part of the agenda in the next session of the UN Human Rights Council, which would be sometime in March. Or if not, that could be, kasi for every year, there are 3 UN Human Rights Council sessions. No? So that could be an opportunity to present a report on the Philippines. So, of course, we do not expect that it's going to be all roses. No. In fact, we would really appreciate a fair and balanced report. And for us to be really told, these are areas that you need to improve on. And for us, that's fair. That's fair.
Roses pa rin, Yusek Noy. Kasi ang roses may thorns eh.
Okay.
All right. So, we still have more interesting questions to ask from Yusek Katura when Street Talk returns after a short break. Stay tuned.
Josel Dariaga po.
At Maita Basa David,
Ngayong December, 10 pesos and 28 centavos per kilowatt hour ang overall electricity rate. Ito ay dahil sa 33 centavos na increase na mula sa pagtatapos ng isang distribution-related refund ng nakaraang buwan.
kahit may konting pagtaas, pwedeng di magastos ang Christmas reunions. Hi!
Pwede na tayo magkita-kita. Iba ang saya pagsama-sama. Kaya kailangan, galing sa puso.
Kasi ang puso, mas mabubusog sa init ng salo-salo. Pero kahit simple lang, basta safe.
At masigla ang lahat. Siguradong masaya ang Pasko.
Maliwanag na Pasko't bagong taon po sa lahat.
Mula sa Meralco at Department of Energy.
Welcome ka dito sa SM. Come as you are. Mahilig ka man sa pabago-bago o sa paikot-ikot. Yung nag-a-adulting or parenting. Ikaw na kulot, white-haired, purple-haired, kayong magkaibigan na nagkaibigan. Buong barkada. Yung gusto mo, chill lang. Or gawin yung feel mo lang. We know you're changing. So we're changing with you. Come on in. We're all in. At SM, you're always welcome here.
Nasa kamay mo ang swerte, ngunit hindi ito isang laro na para lang sa'yo. Dahil bukod sa pag-asang maging milyonaryo, ang pagtangkilik mo sa loto at ipapang produkto ng PCSO ay nakakalikom ng pondo para sa mga programang pangkalusugan, tulong at serbisyong medikal at kawang-gawa.
time I'm on the road, I can expect high performance from Phoenix Fuels. Now with Pulse technology, delivers enhanced power and acceleration to make every trip come alive.
You're still watching Straight Talk. Before we took a break a while ago, we were, Yusek Katura was talking about the previous engagements with the United Nations. Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
So you mentioned last week, Yusek Noy, that UNSR visits are often taken advantage by interest groups that seem to blame or shame the government for alleged release. Now, has this been always the scenario ever since?
Unfortunately, that has informed most of the country visits, no, of special rapporteurs. We were kind of accepting of that reality, but at some point we felt that it would really be very unfair for everyone.
Yes.
That they will be here based on and working based on unvetted and biased information. No, we recall the likes of well, before it was alleged that Philip Alston was not exactly fair. No, the reason why he came over because of many reports coming from certain groups with regards to alleged extrajudicial killings. No, so even before the Philippine government had a chance to explain itself, already many were saying the report has already been prepared. All that was needed was to fill in the blanks. No, so we wanted to get out of that scenario. So we said that if ever we're going to invite special rapporteurs, then it should be properly vetted. There should be proper assessment and review of how they do things. Um, because the situation in the Philippines is very much different than in other countries. No?
Yeah.
In fact, we're always saying that the Philippines is a victim of its own success, its own democratic success. We have a very open civic space, which again many groups are saying that it's shrinking. But for us, how can you say that the civic space is shrinking when we are hearing you? No, we see people going out in the streets, criticizing government to high heavens, appearing in Congress, and then telling all and sundry about what's happening, and even going out of going out of the country and going to the UN and telling everyone who would like to listen that this is what's happening in the Philippines, even based on unvetted and biased information.
Information.
So for us, as I said, we have this open civic space that is very free, wherein everyone can really come in and then say their piece. So our campaign right now, if I may have to move forward in our discussion, no, really our campaign right now is to see how we can broaden that civic space so that everyone has a say. No, it's not just limited to a few NGOs who think that they are the ones entitled to call themselves as human rights defenders. No, so we are opening that civic space to everyone, and that civic space needs to inform visits of UN special rapporteurs, because all these groups have something to say and they need to be heard, no? And we are hoping that special rapporteurs would realize that there's much to learn from the Philippines, and they would be losing a lot if they do not see all and how the Philippine government advances its own human rights agenda. No? So for us, because some countries, like for instance, I believe countries like Thailand, has what they call a blanket invitation. Everyone can come in. You know, well, of course, you can invite everyone, but not everyone can say that we want to come, no, because there's also a very limited budget for special rapporteurs. So, special rapporteurs would have to really schedule their visits. But there are those who are really so interested in coming, primarily because of the kind of information that they're getting. So, these are the more controversial rapporteurs, no? For instance, the rapporteur on human rights defenders, they would want to come, and then of course on information coming from interest groups that are very much again critical of the government. So for us, as I said, all of this need to be properly vetted, and we need to carefully study, because at the end of the day, you may be coming in, but if you have a biased report, which when I say it's a biased report, you know, your report would be useless. Because what's the point of having a biased report on the Philippines if it cannot help us at all?
Correct.
So we are really looking at special rapporteurs who are capable of coming up with fair and balanced reporting. And for us, that we really welcome that kind of special rapporteur.
I recall that Philip Alston was invited during the term
Of GMA.
former president. Yeah.
Yeah, of GMA.
GMA.
In fact, that was the result of an engagement that she had, I think, in Europe.
Yeah.
If I'm mistaken, I think that was in Sweden, I think. After a meeting in Sweden, she said that, oh, if he wants, then he can come in.
And there was a very derogatory report
Yeah,
that was issued by that
yeah. And,
special rapporteur.
yeah, yes. And for us, well, at some point, it clearly made us understand how we should proceed with engaging with special rapporteurs, because we can be very very open in their coming in, but if we will be dealt a bad card, no,
Correct.
out of this. So what's the point? In fact, my one of my more smart alecky comments would be, you know, how can you imagine a country like the Philippines being so pilloried as a human rights violating country, when if you go around, people are very happy. You know, happy. You know,
That's
expats.
the irony
We have
of it,
more than 130,000 expats who are here, and then if you Google, you go through. You go to YouTube. Many foreigners are saying, "You know, we have found paradise here in the Philippines." You know, I guess you should talk to them. You know.
And the fact that 87% of Filipinos support the leadership at the time that they were trying to.
Yeah, that's correct. And now that you mentioned that, we even mentioned, no, during the UPR, that under the Duterte administration, 3 months after he stepped down, SWS came up with a survey, and he was still at 81%.
81%.
So that's really a very fair and I think disinterested survey coming from somebody who stepped down after a survey that came 3 months. I think that came in September. So, you know, that's how valid.
Wala nang
Wala na, talagang
influence.
wala na.
It's a validation.
Yeah, it's about, and you know, the mere fact that the people wanted to continue that really affirmed that things are going well. And we, you know, a government that has governed as well is actually good for human rights. You know, and that also gives us an idea what exactly is human rights, no? Kasi ano ba talagang pinagsulong ni Presidente Duterte at the time, no? At sinusulong din ngayon, 'di ba? Healthcare, education, empowerment sa labor, 'di ba?
Peace and order.
Peace and order, protection of anti-terrorism, 'di ba? That's actually kaya nga yung ano I can still remember yung mantra ni ni Presidente Duterte, 'di ba? A society that is free from terrorism, free from the proliferation of illegal drugs, free from corruption, free from criminality, is a human right. Yan ang yun ang dapat maintindihan palagi ng mga tao.
So ang human rights talagang it encompasses talagang a very
Yes,
very
yes.
broad.
Oo. Kaya nga exciting itong exciting nga talaga itong human rights in a way. Kasi this is also an opportunity for us to really discuss it openly. O, halimbawa, ito na lang ginagawa natin na to. You know, and this is not just your program. A lot of programs are actually a manifestation of the freedom of expression that we have in the country, no?
So that's
The product of democracy.
so that's a good thing to report. The
Yes.
special rapporteurs coming here next
That's
week.
correct. Kasi if they do not come, no, and we do not wish to come for them to come as well, everyone to come kasi iba naman yun. The honest to goodness rapporteurs and the honest to goodness observers will come to realize yung level of freedom that we have. Kaya nga, by the way, next year, we will have the UN Special Rapporteur on the freedom of expression. I think that will also cover media. No? So that would be a good chance to debunk kung ano yung sinasabi nung isang tao na sinasabi na that the Philippines is a war zone, that there is no freedom of expression in the Philippines, that media is being suppressed. That would be a good opportunity. Parang in your face, man.
I know you're talking of.
Ayaw na natin banggitin eh. Masyado na siyang na-dignify eh. Pero, alam mo, talagang we are a victim of our own democracy. We're too free. We are so free.
A victim of our own democracy.
Yun ang ano dyan. I'm not saying that democracy is bad, no? But if democracy is so politicized
And abused.
no? Kaya ano yan eh. It's like di ba? Kaya nga there's a distinction between human rights violations and human rights abuses. Di ba? For instance, you are given the human right to express. But if you go beyond that, you abuse your right.
Abusing the right.
So that same person that we were referring to actually abused their human right. No? Yun ang ano yan.
So balikan lang natin yung
Parang
USEC.
iba na napunta sa
Balikan natin USEC no yung UNSR visit.
Okay.
On a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 as the highest, how would you rate the success yung visit ni Madam Singhateh?
A 4 would be okay. A 4 would be okay. Kasi ano yan eh. Of course, there's still we could have shared much more to her. Kasi for us I think a 5 to 6 day visit focusing on the Philippines on the government work is not enough. Kaya lang it would also be very tedious on our part because it really you have to mobilize people, you have to mobilize resources.
Yeah, I understand you even went outside Metro Manila.
Yeah.
As far as Cotabato.
Pumunta talaga sila sa in fact sabi nga namin don't you have any me time, no? Sabi niya wala daw talaga kasi talagang very hectic. Pero sabi ko it would be good for her to come back. Pero as a tourist. And then para hindi siya and then incognito, makakapagtanong siya talaga ng nangyayari. Actually that's the best way of coming to the Philippines
The visit of Singhateh, she brought along an agenda, an itinerary, or is it the government?
That was already part of the earlier discussions. As I said, that there were more than four months of discussions. There were actually key areas that she wanted to go into: prevention, protection, and then yung justice and rehabilitation. So these are the key areas that she wanted to explore. No? What we did was we formed thematic clusters to really identify the issues para nakatutok siya. So we had one handling for instance on prevention. We had a Council for the Welfare of Children as the lead. For protection, we had the Department of Social Welfare, and then for justice and rehabilitation, we had the Department of Justice. No? So inaayos natin yan. And to be fair naman, and to much to the credit of our partners in government, Madam Singhateh was really very open and very vocal in her acknowledgement that she really had a very well-managed visit. Sabi ko, we do that. That's how we prepared we are. So we do not simply just invite somebody because we need to properly prepare. No, we need to properly prepare. Hindi naman yan basta mo nalang itapon siya kung saan siya pumunta. Hindi pwede.
Yeah.
She also needs to be provided with enough information so that she can also come up with a good report and she can learn from us. and she can make proper recommendations, no? Para sa kabuuan niyang, parang hindi siya hindi parachute journalism, di ba? Yung sasabi natin sa journalism. Na, para at least maunawaan niya talaga yung konteksto na
So, hindi fact-finding mission talaga yun.
No, it's not a fact-finding mission. Kaya nga,
Talagang
pinagka-clarify namin yan, it's a sharing
learning.
of best practices.
Oo.
It's
Sharing
learning
of information.
and teaching each other. So, kasi yung fact-finding, even, napaka-safe naman yung word na fact-finding mission eh, kung titignan mo eh. Pero kasi ginagamit palagi ng mga critical mga groups eh. Parang, there's something wrong in the Philippines, so there's a fact-finding
somebody
mission.
came to visit.
On a fact-finding mission, yun. Parang ano yan, maghahanap ka ng kaso.
Kahit
Pero
yung term na
Pero it
special
seems naman,
rapporteur.
I haven't read that, mga ganung klaseng ano. Sabi mo nga, Yusek Noy, this time, it's not politicized.
Yeah. Kaya nga, we
I
also...
haven't
we are,
read negative things about that visit.
yeah, and we are really very thankful that many of the CSOs that cooperated really realized the value, no? That they would be helping us a lot. They would be helping themselves as well if they do not elevate it to something that's political.
Correct.
No. Kasi, ano talaga eh. And there are really some groups that all they really do is do that.
Yeah.
To politicize everything.
Agree. So you were part of the delegation, Yusek Noy, that met with the UNSR, including Undersecretary Tapales, the director of the Council for the Welfare of Children. What were the highlights of the Children's Center's visit?
Well, unfortunately, I was not with the group that went to the centers, no. But based on the feedback coming from my staff, one, they had an opportunity to engage with no less than the children. So, and that for us is very very crucial, no, because you need to really engage with the main stakeholder, which is the children. And by the way, when we talk about children's rights in the country, rights protection of children, you do not talk to the elders, no, or to the parents. You also need to the children to talk to the children to get their sentiments, their thoughts, and because we believe that children are very much able to convey what they want. So that was part of the engagement of Madam Singhate. She was also able to look into, and I believe she was also able to compare how the private sector deals with children's concerns as against what the government does in terms of its rehabilitation, its social welfare services, and of course the role of the DILG, because it's very critical to have the Department of the Interior and Local Government made part of the larger picture, because at the end of the day, of course, it's really things happen on the ground. So the local government has to take an active role in that. And it's also a chance, and I believe it was also an opportunity to check on what are the specific community-based programs for children. So that's basically based on the feedback coming from my...
Are you familiar kung ilan ba ang children's centers in the whole country?
Unfortunately, I'm not familiar.
So yung mga nabisita ni UNSR, combination of private and government-run
Yes.
children's centers.
In fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, most of these areas and centers that she visited actually came from her. No? It was recommended by her team. So, of course, we wanted to present the best, no? And I believe, regardless of whatever she chose, we have something good to present, no? So for us, again, the fact that we agreed to what she wanted is already again an affirmation of how open we are. We are not there to simply sugarcoat what we are doing, but to present it as it is. Because for us, we would have much to learn if we really present to her what are our concerns in the first place. No, hindi mo naman ika nga, how can you solve a problem kung ikaw mismo hindi mo i-acknowledge yung problem areas. So for us, nung makita namin yung mga na-propose yung mga area, sabi namin, sige, kasi most likely may problema dyan, baka makatulong siya. Ang kagandahan kasi sa mga ganito, and if you really have an honest to goodness visitor, you can be very open. Pwede mong sabihin na, Madam, you are the expert in this field, so what can you teach us along this regard? So, at the same time, we also make their visit relevant. And that's also part of, sinabi ko, part of our statement. It's also part of strengthening the mechanism. No, na maging talaga siyang responsive.
Are you privy, Yusek, sa initial findings niya, and ano yung mga observations that should be dealt with urgent attention, or where improvements can be made?
Ang ano lang, ang what really struck me very significantly. One is, sabi niya, it's important kasi she's also coming in from a lawyer's perspective. No, she has a lawyer's perspective. I think she used to be the Attorney General of the Gambia. Mataas yung kanyang katungkulan eh. So she was into that, but at the same time, she's also very much her framework, her legal framework is very much aligned with programs and policies on the ground. So maganda yung kanyang nakikita. One, ang sabi niya, it's not enough to have family courts. Perhaps we could strive to have more specific courts for children na yung kaso talaga was sale and sexual exploitation. So nakatutok siya doon. Pangalawa, sabi niya baka it's also important for us to move into transition centers. Kasi pag narirehab ang isang tao, hindi mo naman siya after that bigla mo siyang i-reintegrate to society. Parang there has to be a gradual phasing in eh. So she was talking about transition centers, no. Yun ang nakita ko doon. At the same time, well, she commended us into a lot of things, no? Yung cooperation of government and the private sector, maganda yun ang na-mention niya. For us, I believe based on the exit conference reporting, maganda yung we were of course he mentioned yung issues she has concern with child marriages, teenage pregnancies, no? So these are part of course of the discussion, and that's very real. And then, ang tanong diyan is what are we doing about it, no? So sa atin naman, meron tayong mga sagot diyan, but of course pwede pa natin paayusin.
Pero yung second broader picture, as you said, is the involvement of foreign individuals exploiting children through the internet, and having these predators, I call them predators, to be accountable.
Yeah.
So how the visit of the SR will be able to help us around this?
Well, I really hope that that could be one of the forward-looking recommendations that she can convey before the UN. At least yan eh. Kasi what we really wanted from out of this is really pagdating sa mga ganito, maraming cases tayo ang mga kabataan natin ang biktima. And we want to do something about it. And how we wish that the Philippines can really be a champion before the world, no? A champion against the sale and sexual exploitation, because we are victims. So if he can carry that agenda with us in the UN, that would be very good, no, para sa atin. Marami siyang in fact, I believe she also mentioned the need for us to look at sexual exploitation in the context of travel and tourism. So these are the areas na pwede natin makita yan. Kasi what can happen after this is, once she comes up with a recommendation, then we need to convene an interagency meeting para tingnan natin how can we convert these recommendations into policies and programs. Kasi this cannot just stay as recommendations. And it's a good thing meron tayong mechanism yan na kami ang humahawak. We call it a national mechanism for reporting and follow-up. So that would be definitely be part of the process.
When is the Philippine government expecting the written report of
Technically, that should really come mga after mga 2 or 3 months. 2 or 3 months prior to the
ahead of the periodic review.
the periodic review happens every 5 years.
next
Ah.
after 5 years?
5 years
already?
yun.
So what do you call the next cycle?
Yung pag-report ng special rapporteur, that will be reported before the UN Human Rights Council. So the next Human Rights
March.
Council would be in March. So there are 3 sessions in a year, March and then the middle of the year and then close to the
November.
Mga ganon. Mga ano.
So wala munang movement, wala pang moving forward until the recommendations.
Yeah, so far wala pa pero I believe the CWC has already taken into account all the recommendations. And for them, they already started to work on them on these recommendations. No? Hindi naman kailangan na hintayin pa 'yon. Kung sa tingin natin, nga pala, tama pala yung sinabi niya, gawin na natin.
Oo, like I was supposed to ask yung moving forward in terms of concerns on child marriages, illegal adoption, and teenage pregnancies.
These are areas na we believe na baka kailangan ditong dumaan sa congressional processes. So, the legislative processes need to be considered as well. So, dito tayo papasok. No? Kaya nga, ang sabi na natin dito, after we have the recommendations, parang yung sa UPR din, Universal Periodic Review, what will happen is, tingnan natin ang rekomendasyon na ito, tingnan natin kung how we can translate them into laws, into policies, into programs, and then identify sino ba sa gobyerno ang dapat ginagawa ito. And then, after a certain period, i-follow up natin what have been done. So, ganun lamang siya. And then, yung mechanism yun kasi, we have in the process of refining that. Kami yung lead agency for that.
Can I ask something, Yusek?
Sige po.
Kasi yung, like in early marriage of children, some of them happen because of cultural beliefs and traditions. So, is that taken in as a factor for?
Yes, definitely. Kasi ganito yan yung mga purists, no, yung mga nag-insist that this is what human rights ought to be. Lalo na yung mga Western Europeans. Ano sa kanila yun parang a big no-no sa kanilang tinatawag na cultural revisionism. No, para bang, hindi pwede, culture should not come into this. But the reality is, culture plays a big part. No? Culture plays a big part. Kahit na tingnan mo, kahit na yung panahon ng sa simbahan nga dati, St. Thomas Aquinas was an advocate for capital punishment. Di ba? So, dapat titingnan mo talaga kung saan ang gagaling. And it should be considered as well. Child marriages, sasabihin ng mga Muslims, it's accepted under our belief, traditions, no?
Yes.
So, maraming nagsasabi din naman na, teka muna, i-define muna natin, ano ba talaga ang child marriages for them? Ano ba ang mali dito sa ano? Hindi mo sasabihin mo na, ay hindi pwede, parang binaliwala sila They like yung same-sex marriage, yung divorce. That's clearly against...
Kasama din ba yun sa recommendations?
Ano lang ako, in-expand ko na yun. Kasi yung pag-appreciate ng human rights should be comprehensive. It should be really broad. Hindi ka dapat padadala lamang doon sa anong sinabi sa ng mga Westerners na And tandaan natin...
Iba yung Oriental.
Tsaka makikita mo, ang human rights for us Asians, for us, we're community-based. Collective rights tayo Hindi tayo tulad ng mga kadalasan sa mga puti, mga Westerners. Mga mga individual rights ito Di ba kaya marami mga Karens, di ba, lumalabas sa kasi akin lang ito. Hindi mo iniisip ko ano yung kapakanan doon sa sa nangyayari sa komunidad mo kasi akin lang siya.
Kaya nagiging parang imposition rather than...
Yes, oo. Parang respetuhin mo rin yung mga tao. Di ba?
So, I guess hindi ko na rin naman pwedeng matanong yung timeline. But sabi nga ni Yusek Noy, even in the absence of, while waiting for the recommendations of SR, I mean, the government can already pursue
Yes.
measures
Oo.
based on the recommendations ni SR during the exit
Yeah,
conference.
yeah, oo.
So the legislative branch plays a very important role, in pushing for laws that would protect our children.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Oo.
So di ko napansin, medyo mahaba na pala yung ating discussion. It's dami. I guess we
Quite,
need a follow-through with
it's quite
the
interesting.
Council for the Welfare of Children. So, Yusek Noy, do you have last words for our viewers?
Well, oo na.
On-
Thank you so much for inviting me in this
It's our
program.
pleasure.
No?
Yusek.
I always find such an opportunity for discourse, no? Especially human rights, something that's uplifting as well as liberating. No?
and very
Kasi
close to your heart.
I am very close to my heart. Sabi ko nga sa kanila, one thing that I really appreciate in working in government is that I never felt working at all. Kasi I'm in a field which is my passion, no? Human rights, peace process, these are really my areas of work, no? Kasi nakatahi yan eh. Nakatahi yan.
Yeah.
So, sa akin lang, it's a good thing that we are now seeing people, Filipinos appreciating the width and breadth of human rights. There's so much to see and appreciate in human rights, and I really hope that one of these days mas makikita ng mga tao yan. No? When we come out, when we see roads giving us access to travel, when we see children even coming from the poor communities having their education, and when we see people accessing PhilHealth more and more, and then maganda yung kanilang sahod, these are all related to human rights, no?
Basic rights.
These are
yes.
basic rights, and then we see people coming together, then people who are really passionate about of serving others given a voice in that shrinking civic space na sabi nila, no? But actually a flourishing civic space, pag nakikita na narinig natin, mothers of disappeared children, ito yung mga gusto natin marinig eh, di ba? Yung mga anak na ng mga na-recruit ng mga NPAs na may boses sila.
Yeah.
This is actually human rights. This is what human rights is all about, no? And really, this informs what human rights is in the Philippines. And we really hope that in time, with more shows like this na mapag-uusapan natin, there will be a keen and more appreciative realization, no? An appreciative look of the milestones that we have in human rights, especially in the Philippines.
Yun.
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 Well said, pero kulang ang oras. So we'd like to thank you, Yusek Noy, for gracing today's episode of Straight Talk. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kahit short notice. Chita.
Yeah. So watch Straight Talk 10 a.m. every Tuesday on Daily Tribune Facebook page and Tribune Now on YouTube.
And thank you mga katribu for tuning in. This has been Straight Talk. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you.